The webinar has started. Alrighty, thank you to all of those who are on right now. I'm just gonna give a couple, like 1 or 2 minutes to allow people to trickle in. Also, just let you know, we will have interpretation services. So if you're in need of Spanish interpretation, Michelle will be interpreting for us. There's a little icon of a globe. Please click on that and click the Spanish channel. We also will have a portion of the presentation in Spanish. So if you need English translation, please do the same thing.
And as more people trickle in, we'll make sure to remake that announcement so that folks can listen into the webinar in their chosen preferred language.
Ready. Alrighty, I'm just giving a couple more minutes. Oh, and there's Eduardo. So Eduardo, we are able to promote you to panelist.
Oh, ya. Ah, qué bien, entonces puedes entrar con lo que sea.
Yeah. Also, yes, this will be recorded. I am just going to wait until we officially start. So I'm just going to give a couple more minutes for people to trickle in. It will be posted onto the LMU, to the Loyola Law School YouTube. I will also be making this announcement in the intro again.
Thank you, everybody, for joining your evening with us. Remember, if you have any questions, submit them in the Q&A feature. This is a three-part series, so if there's anything that comes up, we will make sure that we don't answer in this one in particular. We will make sure to try and get to it in the other sessions. And remember to sign up and register for the rest of them. Thank you all.
Alrighty, it is 6:05. Should we get started? Yes? Okay. So yes, I know Alessandro already gave a little bit of an intro, but we are officially kicking off, and I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Marissa Montes, and I'm a professor at Loyola Law School and the director of Loyola's Immigrant Justice Clinic. Thank you so much for joining us with this webinar series. I do want to say that we have interpretation services available. Thank you so much to Michelle for helping us out today. If you're in need of interpretation, please make sure to click on the little globe icon at the bottom. And for Spanish language, I also want to say that there will be a portion of this presentation in Spanish. So if you're in need of English interpretation, make sure to also access that little globe. So let me tell you just a little bit about why we're doing this series. So our clinic is based here in LA, but we also have our binational clinic that's based in Guadalajara. And we've actually been getting a lot of community outreach and questions regarding the options of self-repatriation. And we wanted to basically do this type of webinar series to inform folks of how you can best prepare in the event that you decide to return back to your home country, right now with a focus in Mexico. So just I also want to introduce my colleagues who will be presenting. Alessandro Negrete, who will be kicking us off in just a short moment. Girls, can you change the slide so I can just show everyone's face? Our two wonderful law students, Isabella Bowers and Jocelyn Andrade, along with Professor Eduardo Osornio that overlooks our binational work in Guadalajara. And then Kevin and I will also be available to help answer questions towards the end. So a couple of things. We are recording. So in the event that you are not able to watch the whole thing or know somebody who might be interested in watching a later date, this recording will be available on the Loyola Law School YouTube page. So, and we will make sure to also e-blast that out once it's officially posted. Also, I did mention the translation option, but the other thing that we wanted to ask for your help is the reason why we're able to do this for free is because we are receiving grant funding. So I'm going to ask if you could please complete this following demographic survey to just let us know where you're at, and who you are. It doesn't actually ask for any of your personal identification number, but this would help us tremendously ensure that we can continue hosting these types of events for free to the community. So I'm popping it into the chat for everyone to fill out. And also, there will be a Q&A portion at the end. You are also welcome to put your questions into the chat. We will try to answer them live, either be myself, Eduardo, and Kevin. At the end, you will also have the opportunity to ask questions to our panelists. I do just want to say that this is for informational purposes only. We do highly recommend that if you are looking for legal consult, that you speak to an attorney. Please refrain from asking personal questions just because of confidentiality, but we will try to answer questions the best that we can in a way that is general. And with that being said, I am going to hand it off. And Alessandro, the floor is yours.
So before we get started, I just wanted to let you all know a couple of things that we'll be covering. One of them is we're going to be doing some myth debunking. I know that for some of us, I'll speak for myself. I grew up in the United States, and you'll hear more about me through this conversation. Uh, Sorry, y'all, give me a quick second so I can have Michelle on my screen in case I'm talking too fast. Um, I grew up with the concept of Mexico that was instilled in me from my parents. So we will be talking about common fears, misinformation, and just some of the support that exists. There will be a portion where Jocelyn and Isabella will be talking about documents, where to get them, what they are, and the purposes, and then we will close with a Q&A. So I feel like I've gotten so good at telling my story for so long. Some of you may know me, some of you may not, but I am Alessandro. I lived in the United States and documented for over 40 years. I grew up in South Central and Boyle Heights most of my life. I call Boyle Heights home. When my family migrated, I was 3 months old, and I was able to build a lot of an amazing community through the work that I did in advancing racial justice, environmental justice, LGBTQ rights, and immigrant rights. Um, I When we got to the country, the US, I was 3 months old. We landed in South Central. I remember everything about feeling that I was American. I never knew anything other. And then my parents split up and we moved to Boyle Heights. And that's really the community that embraced me as a whole, allowed me to develop myself and grow into the person that I am. I was politicized in the East Side. I consider myself an East Sider. Um, and I went to First Street Elementary, Hollenbeck Middle School, and I graduated from Roosevelt High School. If you know anything about East Siders, we're very proud people. Um, but I won't bore you with my whole life. Part of this webinar series is thinking through, as Marisa opened, like, if any of you are thinking or considering even the slightest bit, um, in leaving to your home countries. I came to Mexico. I was born in Manzanillo, Colima, and my journey of repatriation really starts with my what I call my hasta ahí moment. Like I've had it. I had grown up. I had fought a lot of um, racism. I had advanced a lot of rights and worked on a lot of laws in California, in the county of LA, and in the city. I was a neighborhood council member, which is the lowest form of government in the city of LA, but it's still um, a voted in position. I was voted in by the community of Boyle Heights to represent them for 2 terms, and I did everything that I could to really stand behind that, and that really taught me the meaning of what it was to represent for community. I've always seen my role in life as a um in service of. So a lot of the work that I've done has been in service of community. And I feel like me leaving, me telling my story, me allowing the LA Times and other news outlets to report my story was my last offering on that side of the border. Now on this side, I look forward to connecting with as many people that have questions that I can talk to from my lived experience on this side. I It was in February, actually, a year ago today, or this weekend, actually, when I made the decision internally. I had just lost a couple of contracts as an undocumented person. I never had DACA. I never had any kind of relief. I worked as a contractor and I have an LLC. I was starting to lose contracts. A lot of folks in the nonprofit sector were really pivoting, scrambling around, wondering where their future funding was going to come from. And I was losing work, and I was just like, you know what? I remember seeing the news, and it was around the State of the Union, which is happening right now. And I remember thinking to myself, this is only going to get worse. And I am too old to continue to fight. I am 43 years old, and there's no such thing as too old, but it's just I wanted to explore the world, and and I put the title on there, The Audacity of an Immigrant to Dream in America, because for so long we try to build a life, but we're still always limited. And that day I just told myself, like, I've had it. Like I can't do this anymore. I want to travel the world. I want to see as much as I can beyond the US. And I made that decision internally. I would say about my I didn't have a job at the time. I didn't have the job that I have now. And so I started doing research around what it looks like to find a job in Mexico. I reached out to family members that I hadn't spoken to, I don't think, since I was a little kid, around like what are the job opportunities. And as much as I love them, like it's a very different reality, right? I was able to get higher education in the US. I was able to build a brand, a career. And so some of the work that what they were telling me, I'm just like, I can definitely do that, but I want to see what else I can dream of. And so I started looking at websites like CompuTrabajo, Indeed, LinkedIn, and coming from the public and private sector, there was a lot of opportunities. Definitely not in Ciudad Mexico. I always tell people, think through where you want to go because the opportunities are there, but they're not everywhere. And so Mexico is a very ageist country. As a 40-year-old in Ciudad Mexico, the likelihood of me being able to have found job was pretty slim if I was just using those websites. And 1 in 10 jobs was for someone in my age, but not making a living in a way that I wanted to. And so I continued to look for work in the US that was remote. I had my LLC, and I was able to find a job that allowed me to move. It was right at the time when I had decided to write a love letter to my community. I am the byproduct of the hood. I am the byproduct of everyone that I've encountered. I am the byproduct of Boyle Heights bridge runners, of the neighborhood council, of the immigrant community, of a Black and brown unity. Growing up in South Central, those are a lot of tenets that I carried with me. And so I wrote a love letter in my Substack, that I posted. And it was with a heavy heart that I announced to my communities that I was leaving. And it wasn't an act of selfishness, and it wasn't an act of giving up, but it was an act of me choosing to define what that looks like, which is why if you all read my story or have heard about it, I refuse to use the word self-deported. I refuse to allow the administration to define my life as I want to, especially as I moved over here. If white immigrants can call themselves expats, why can't I call myself whatever I want? And so I wrote that love letter, and it got to the eyes of folks at the LA Times. And at the time I didn't know the magnitude of what it meant for me to leave. I don't consider myself someone that, with a lot of desire to be the center of attention. But in talking to the reporter, I realized that this can be an offering. And so that's why I allowed them to follow me for 3 weeks, record my goodbye party. There's a video. There's pictures of me ugly crying, but that was my last offering before I embarked on this journey. I started packing up my stuff. A lot of people were like, "What did you do with your things?" I used this as an emotional cleansing as well. So I sold everything that I had that I didn't see would add value to my new life that I'm starting. And I had a huge yard sale, but I also used that as an opportunity to bring the people that I love together and have them buy pieces of me. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I allowed people to take memories of that I had created in the US, in Boyle Heights, in movement with them. A lot of my movement shirts from a lot of work that I had done from my time at East Yard, from my time in the neighborhood council, from the time with the Boyle Heights Bridge Runners, a lot of those items were sold. And as healing as it was also a reminder that you know, friendship doesn't have borders. And that really was super helpful because as it closer and closer to my departure date, um, it really hit me like, oh, my mom told me like, make sure to get your ENIT and you're gonna hear about it later. But I found out it takes 3 months to get it in the US, and I did it. All that to come over here, and they didn't work. So you'll hear more about that later. But when I left in September 4th and I drove down, I made the decision to leave from San Diego because as connected as I was, I knew there was still a lot of uncertainty with this administration. And the last thing I wanted to happen to me was I am ready to leave, and the administration is going to get me anyways and try and at this point in June is I remember also. I was at the manifestations that happened at on Temple in downtown LA at the front lines protesting against ICE. And I remember there was a moment when someone was like, "What are you doing here? You need to go." And in that moment, I forgot who I was because I'm so invested in my community's well-being that I forgot to think about myself. And community reminded me that I needed to be saved too. And so I left, but things were just getting worse. And so everything seemed to have aligned itself for me to leave. I had just gotten a job offer to be the executive director of an international organization. The raids were starting to really ramp up, and I had a job that supported me. So beyond getting a job making American money, I had a job that fully supported this decision for me to take the reins of my life beyond America. And so on September 4th, I decided to have a caravan with my friends and drive to San Diego to have a sort of a bridge. You know, San Diego to me and Tijuana seem they're border cities. And so when you're there, for me, it's still kind of like I could still see America. Even though I couldn't go back, there was a part of me that felt some relief. And so I did it that way. I know that from then to now, there have been a lot of people that have tried to leave from US airports and have gotten detained. I don't know if that's still happening, but I know that that was a big concern for me. So I decided to cross the border. I didn't fill out the CBP One app or whatever the app is called. Um, I didn't, it's technically not recorded in any legal way. At least I don't think. Marissa might correct me later. But was there for 2 days to really allow myself the moment to breathe, to take in the fact that I can't go back, that I would not be going back anytime soon. But I was doing all of that with community. So there was a sense of, you know, it was a sense of relief, but it was also confusion. Like my brain was processing it like, this feels like a vacation because I'm with my friends. But on September 6th, I boarded a one-way trip to Guadalajara. And I think, this is the first time I say it out publicly, but I had a panic attack. Um, I was on the plane and I didn't know what was waiting for me on the other, once we landed. I don't have family here. It's not something that I actively share, but I genuinely had to ground myself in my dog. I brought my emotional support animal, what they call my dog daughter here, Lorca, and I just hugged her. After a while, and I went to the bathroom, took a deep breath, and welcomed the opportunity. I couldn't allow myself to break because one, I didn't want the newspapers to like capture it, but also for me, like, you know what? The hustle isn't going to leave me once I cross the border. Like once I was on that plane, like I'm still going to hustle no matter what. I was doing this. There was intention behind me leaving. And we landed. It took us a while to get to the Airbnb that my job so kindly purchased for me. And, you know, I opened the windows and what greeted me was the city, the beautiful sight of the city. And that allowed me to have a breath of fresh air. And after that, it's been a whirlwind. September, even though I was there, I don't consider it my first month because I traveled for work. I had to go to Ciudad Mexico, which was a great opportunity to connect with an aunt that I hadn't seen since I was 5. But it was also an opportunity for me to really step into this new life that I said I wanted. I wanted to explore Mexico. This is an opportunity. And so it really didn't feel, and it wasn't until I also got my first apartment that I was like, okay, this is officially mine. This is where I'll be from now on, at least for a year. This is where my life really begins. And I stepped into that, really confused. And, we're going to have a webinar around finances, but there's a lot that isn't told to you or explained to you. And there were moments of cultural shock, not completely because I speak Spanish, but the Spanish here is not the same. But I was also very fortunate to land in a period of a lot of celebration here in Mexico. There was El Grito de Independencia on September 16th, which was one of the most beautiful things to see. People here in Mexico have such a pride and love for the country that surpasses anything that I ever saw in the US. There was Dia de Muertos, which I was able to experience in parts of Guadalajara. There was Las Posadas Navideñas. There was so much celebration, El Día de la Virgen, that I've been able to enjoy and really let myself feel. And up until now, there isn't a moment that I can tell you that I regret. Do I miss people? Of course. But again, friendship does not have borders. Family does not have borders. And I talk to them every day. And so outside of seeing them every weekend, like I talk to them every day. I'm still in the group chats. I still have my US number. I've been able to navigate my new normal in a way that has still allowed me to continue to even connect with you all on that side of the border. Community also does not have borders. So, it's been a beautiful thing, and this journey is unique. And before I hand it over to Isabella and Jocelyn to talk to you all about the nitty-gritty, I leave you all with just a reminder that this isn't an easy choice, but it is a choice that any one of us can activate while we're on that side. And there's nothing wrong with choosing yourself and remembering that and grounding yourself in, it's okay has helped me. But also, there's a community of people ready to receive you on this side too. So with that, I hand it over to Jocelyn and Isabella.
Thank you very much, Alessandro, for sharing your story with us. It's amazing to hear from you, and we're excited for the next webinars to continue to discuss all of these important issues. So now we're going to transition to talking about the identity documents you would need to get by in Mexico. And as you can see, there are 5 documents in total that we will be discussing today. They are your Mexican birth certificate, CURP, INE, RFC, and your Mexican passport. And please take note that this is likely the easiest order in which to get your documents. We will talk more about this later on, but just as an example, you'll need, your CURP to get your RFC. And that's why we put the CURP before the RFC in this presentation. So first, your birth certificate. Why do you need a Mexican birth certificate? Well, a Mexican birth certificate is going to be key, again, for obtaining your other identity documents, like your Mexican passport, for example. It's also going to be really important for registering a foreign-born child with Mexican nationality. So what exactly does that mean? Let's walk through an example. Let's say you were born in Mexico, but migrated to the United States, where you started a family. Now you want to move back to Mexico with your US citizen children. You may be considering getting your children Mexican citizenship so that they are a dual citizen of both Mexico and the United States. Um, to register your child as a Mexican citizen, you will need proof that you yourself are a Mexican citizen, and that proof would be your Mexican birth certificate. Dual citizenship is an important consideration. For your children, it can help them adapt to life in Mexico, help them have, the same access to resources that a Mexican citizen would have, for example. And it's also important for, accessing your property rights and undertaking a legal name change, for example. So we can move on to the next slide. So where exactly are the Mexican birth certificates kept? It's important to note that Mexican birth certificates system is not centralized. Birth certificates are handled by each Mexican state. So really it depends, on where you were born. You might be able to get it online from a federal portal, but you might also only be able to get it from a state level office. It just depends. Especially if your birth certificate is older, or if you were born in a more rural location. But your first step is going to be trying to see if you can find it online. And if you do find it online, you're going to be able to view it, you're going to be able to print it. And once you print it on a standard letter size white paper, that birth certificate that you printed in your own home, it will be legitimate before any, government authority. But if that doesn't work, you are going to try to request your birth certificate from a local civil registry office. And we can move to the next slide. So again, if you want to get your birth certificate online, the first step is to create an account with Llave Mexico on the Mexican government's website. And that picture on the right is a little bit, gives you an idea of what it looks like. You're going to have to enter your full name, your date of birth, your place of birth, your parents' full names, and include your CURP if you know it. You will have to pay a small fee, and preferably using your Mexican debit or credit card if you have one. And again, you're going to want to print it out, your birth certificate, immediately once you have it, if you do find it. I want you to take note, though, that it's important to use the official Mexican government website. And the official Mexican government website will usually end in gob.mx. Just take care to avoid unofficial fake websites that claim to be the real deal. And we can go to the next slide where you can see a few examples of the fake websites. Next slide, please. Perfect. You can see there, there's a couple of examples like actasia.com, tramitesfacil.com, actamexicana.com. These are not official Mexican government websites, and we want to encourage you to go straight to the official source. As you can see there in green, it's www.gob.mx/actas. And just keep in mind also that some of these unofficial websites might even have the GOBMX in it, in their website domain. So just be aware of that and try to make sure that you're on the correct government website. So if you aren't able to find your birth certificate online, you may try to request your birth certificate directly from the local civil registry office from where you were born. So you're going to want to make sure you identify the correct state and the correct municipality where you were born. And, as you can see here on the left, the consulate websites usually have a list of civil registry offices according to state. Right there, I have an example of one office that you can find in Jalisco. And it has the telephone number, the address, office hours, and its own website. And I just would say, just try to do everything you can because every state is different. Try to email them, call them, and as a last resort, once you're in Mexico, if you decide to move to Mexico, you can request it in person. So how much does it cost to get a copy of your birth certificate? It's going to, again, depend on the state. It can be anywhere from 100 Mexican pesos to 220 Mexican pesos. So in US currency, that could be something like between $5 and $13. Okay. So we talked about the birth certificate, and we're now going to talk about the CURP. And the CURP is kind of like your social security number. It stands for Clave Única de Registro de Población, or in English, the Unique Population Registration Code. And that code is going to be a unique code for each Mexican citizen. It's generated from information about you, like your name and your date of birth. And once you get a CURP, you will have it for your whole life. It will never change. So next slide. Why is the CURP important? It is very important for a couple of different procedures in Mexico. Just to give you a few examples, it's going to be important for opening a bank account, for buying and registering a car, paying your taxes, getting a Mexican driver's license, finding a job. And really important here, this last one is going to be key for joining the National Healthcare Program with the IMSS, or the Mexican Institute for Social Security. So your CURP will allow you to get, full coverage as a Mexican citizen, and you won't have to pay the higher cost that a foreigner would have to pay, the international rates. Okay. So next slide, please. So how do you look up your CURP? You can do so via another government website. This one, www.gob.mex/CURP, and that's what it looks like there on the right. And you can print it at any time however many times you want to, and it's a service that is available for free. And lastly, you can also find it on your Mexican birth certificate, passport, or a resident card if you have one. Okay, so what we just went over was the old CURP and the old procedure that has been used to get a CURP or to look up your CURP for many years. We now want to give you a heads up about a new law governing the creation of a new kind of CURP or the biometric CURP. So just to let you know, the biometric CURP has more details and more information than the original CURP, which was created in 1996. And so it has the usual, information about you in your name, your date of birth, and things like that. But what is new about the biometric CURP is that it's going to have your photograph, your digital signature, your fingerprints, your iris scans, and a QR code. You can move to the next slide. So for those of you who already have your old CURP, you might be wondering, do I need to get this new one? And this is what we know. We know that the law um, enacting, this requirement to get a new biometric CURP was put into place last year in July. But to be honest, there is a little bit of confusion surrounding this new law. And from what we've heard, a lot of people, most people, in fact, have not gotten their biometric CURP yet. So, our recommendation is to keep an eye out for it. Maybe try to get it during this year because it does seem that it will be required eventually. So, how do you get a biometric CURP? You can see here on the bottom left a screenshot from RENAPO, which is the National Population Registry. And, it talks about modules or locations where you can get your biometric CURP. And these modules are going to be, for example, civil registry offices again, or offices of RENAPO. So this obviously will be a process that you will have to undertake in person in Mexico. You can't do it from the United States, at least as far as we know. So once you go to a module to apply for your biometric CURP, you will need to present your birth certificate, your current CURP, if you have it, your INE or your voter credential, or your passport. You'll also need a proof of address that is no more than 3 months old. You'll need a valid email address, and you will need to be prepared to have your fingerprints taken, a photograph taken of you, and also iris scans collected. And children can obtain a biometric CURP if they are accompanied by a parent or a legal guardian. Okay, so we talked about the CURP, which again is something like a social security number. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the INE. The INE is more like a state ID or a voter ID. And strictly speaking, in Spanish, it's called as you can see on the photo on the right, it's called the credencial para votar, or your credential to vote. But in everyday language, you're probably going to hear it referred to as just simply your INE. INE, what it actually stands for is the Instituto Nacional Electoral, or the National Electoral Institute. So once again, it is going to be your official voter ID, but you will also be able to use it for a lot of different things. You're going to be able to use it to vote, open up a bank account, access various types of government services, sign contracts, and other things of that nature. Okay, next slide. So how to get an INE. This again is another process that you will likely have to undertake in Mexico. So you'll need to bring 3 original documents to an office of the INE. And these are proof of Mexican identity, Mexican nationality. So this can be a Mexican birth certificate or a naturalization certificate. You're going to need a valid official ID with your photograph. This can be a passport, a driver's license, a school ID, a military card, or some kind of professional license. And you will need again, proof of address. And this can be a utility bill, a lease, or an official government letter. Once again, no older than 3 months. Um, Technically speaking, it can be under someone else's name if you argue that you are the tenant or the renter of the unit where the letter was directed. And also just take note, if you're arrived to Mexico and you don't have your own place yet, and you're living with family, for example, you can borrow their utility bill, but we would advise you to have that person, who you're living with, come with you to attest that you are living there with them. And just, one other thing to keep in mind, you must be 18 years old, and your documents, again, must be original. They cannot be copies, and they should be in good condition. Okay, so next slide, please. This is a common question that we hear from people. What if I don't have any IDs? Or what if I don't have proof of address? Instead of bringing IDs or proof of address, you can instead bring two witnesses who already have valid INEs. And just take note that one witness must have their INE registered in the same municipality as you, and the other must have their INE registered, in the same state as you. So that is an alternative if you don't have IDs on hand or if you don't have your own place yet. Okay, and just as far as the technical details for getting your INE, you're going to need to schedule an appointment at an INE module, and that's going to be in the top left screenshot there. That's what it looks like. You're going to find your closest module and then schedule an appointment in that bottom left picture in Sistema de Citas appointment system. And then you're going to attend in person with your documents and your proof of identity or your witnesses if needed. And while you're there at the INE module, they'll take your picture, your fingerprints, and your signature. You'll then receive a folio number and then come back in 7 to 15 days to pick up your INE. So you won't get it immediately that first time that you go to the module. You'll get it later on, at least, 7 days later. And in the meantime, if you're wondering, what's going on with your INE, you can check the status on the government website as well. Just take note, again, you have 30 days to pick up your INE once it's ready, or else it will be canceled and you'll need to start all over. So that's basically it for my part for talking about the INE and the birth certificate. And I'm going to pass it on to Jocelyn to talk about the RFC.
Hi, everyone. So before I start, I just want to emphasize something that Isabella said. So the two documents I'll be talking about, the RFC and passport, they also end up going hand in hand with the documents that she talked about. So then it's just to emphasize the importance of starting the process to get some of your documents so that it doesn't affect the impact or delay any procedures for these documents or any other documents that you may need. So I'll start off with the RFC or RFC. So the RFC is Registro Federal de Contribuyentes. This is a unique registration number that's issued to you by Mexico's tax collection agency known as SAT. SAT stands for Servicio de Administración Tribunal. So you can think of this as Mexico's tax collection agency, so their version of the IRS. So for the INE, the process is similar to what you heard from Isabella. So you would have to schedule, it went back, sorry. So sorry, it skipped a couple. So there are two types of RFCs. There's the persona física and there's the persona moral. So for persona física, that's the physical person, and that's very similar to the US Social Security numbers. That would be like a good example of what to think of. And then for the persona moral, that would be more of registered companies. So that would be similar to a company's tax registration number here in the US. To apply for an RFC, you would need to have Mexican nationality or a legal foreign residency card that you can obtain as well. For the RFC, there is two ways to go about it. So if you are applying from the US, then you would have to make an appointment online. So there's an example here, screenshot of the website. And then just to emphasize something that Isabella said, make sure that the website is .gov.mx to make sure that it's official. And the website will give you the option to do it online or in person if you're in Mexico. When you do it online, you would request the appointment and you'll receive an email to confirm that appointment. If you're in person, you can request from your local office or through the website. But just note that you do need an appointment to be able to apply for the RFC. They don't do any walk-ins if you are already in Mexico. So if you are in Mexico, you would have to attend the SAT office to apply, and you would need to take a printed copy of your CURP, which Isabella talked the steps to get that already. You would need to take a proof of residency. So that would be another utility bill or something that shows that you are living in Mexico, and an official ID. And an official ID that you would be able to take is a document that Isabella told us about, which is the INE. If you're doing the appointment from abroad, so here in the US, you would make your appointment online, and then you will need an official identification, proof of address abroad, so any utility bill or bank statement from here in the US that has your name on it. You would need your CURP, which Isabella talked about, your birth certificate, and also you would need to fill out an official SAT form, which you can find on the website. And there's a screenshot of it here to the right, which is just getting some of your documents required, and then also getting some of your information prior to your appointment. These documents will all have to be emailed. If you're making your appointment online, they will send you an email with instructions, and you can also find the instructions online when you make an account to create your appointment. The day of your appointment, it's important to follow the instructions on the email that was sent to you. That way you are also up to date on how they will be requiring you to attend, whether that be through phone call or that be through a video call. So it's important to note that if you don't have an RFC, then you cannot claim capital gains tax exemptions on any property you own in Mexico if you decide to sell it. However, even if you don't have property, it's very important because you won't be able to open a bank account without an RFC. It's being required, so it's very, very important. And then some other things to keep in mind. There's some car dealers in Mexico that are starting to ask for an RFC if you're trying to purchase a car in Mexico. So it's becoming a lot more needed as time has continued to go on. So now we'll jump over to the Mexican passport and how to obtain those documentations. So first, we're going to start with obtaining that from the US. So when you're getting your Mexican passport from the US, you would be going to the Mexican consulate and you would be looking to the one closest to you through their website. And the website itself will also be able to help direct you to what would be the best option for you in terms of your location. So there's a couple of different ways that you would be able to make an appointment. I included a screenshot here in the bottom. The first option is to call that number there, and it lets you know that appointments are available starting Wednesday, so that's when new appointments are released. So every Wednesday. There's also the option to send a message through WhatsApp. There's also the option to do your appointment through the website. Or you can also try to send a text message to a number that's provided there as well. So there's a couple different ways to go about it. It is completely up to you. There is no which one that will help you sooner or be able to get you in sooner. It's just what is most convenient to you that would be the best option there. So if you decide to go through the website, then you would go to the Mexican consulate website, click on Citas Consulares, and then click on Pasaporte. And then from there, it would let you choose your appointment day and appointment time. For your appointment, you'll need to take with you proof of Mexican nationality. So that would be either a birth certificate, a certificate or declaration of Mexican nationality, or a letter of naturalization. And you would also need to take a proof of identity. It's really important to note that your name on your proof of identity needs to match your Mexican nationality. So if you've gone through a name change, which has changed one of your identity documents, it's important to find one or have some sort of proof that it is you. It was just a name change that happened. So just very important. And then the cost of issuing a Mexican passport depends on the expiration date that you request or that is given to you. So it can be anywhere from your passport being for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and so forth. It's just the cost will be dependent on that. So if you already have a Mexican passport, however, it's expired and you want to renew it from the US, it would be a very similar procedure where you would need to go to the Mexican consulate here in the US and you would, again, make an appointment, choose through one of these options you can choose from. And the additional step here is that you would have to take your original passport with you, even though you may not have it, the consulate will help you make a report of either it being lost, it being stolen. They just need to have it documented that there's no longer access to this expired passport. And then from there, they will just be treating you as if it were your first time getting your passport. And again, you'll have to take a proof of Mexican nationality in case the information is not in their system, and then a proof of identity. And then another thing to note is that, it's going backwards. Sorry about that. It's another thing to note that if you have children who are also Mexican nationals or and they don't have their Mexican passport, or if it is expired, there is additional steps that will need to be taken for them. So to get an appointment, it would be the same thing as yours to start, where you would have to make an appointment either through website, phone call, text message, WhatsApp. And then from there, you would have to have both parents appear with the minor to be able to take their birth certificate and their proof of parentage. So if both parents are not available, then it's important to let the consulate know when making your appointment because they can provide you the appropriate steps that are necessary. So for example, if a parent has passed away, then they can go ahead and ask you to bring the death certificate. If a parent is not available, they can go ahead and tell you, depending on this circumstance, these are the documents that we accept. So it's very important to note that if both parents are not available, there still are options available to you to be able to get your child their passport. For their passport appointment, they will need to take proof of Mexican nationality, proof of identity, parent consent. So the parent consent can be given through the form OP7, which can be found on the website. If it's the case that for whatever reason the child's parents are not in the US and would not be able to sign in person, parents can also go to the Mexican embassy or consulate abroad to be able to sign this form for them in Mexico. That way they are able to continue that process while here in the US with the help of their guardian. And then I'll go ahead and pass it on to Eduardo for the next part.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Bueno, para todos los que necesiten traducción, pueden también aplicar en la opción que tienen en el Zoom, dado que esta pequeña parte la voy a hablar en español para ser más fácil la explicación. Para que lo puedan escuchar en inglés, ¿no? Bueno, les voy a hablar sobre la carta de repatriación. Este documento, a diferencia de los anteriores, no se tramita con el consulado del lado de Estados Unidos, sino que es un documento que les entrega el Instituto Nacional de Migración en el caso de haber sido deportados por ICE o por las autoridades estadounidenses al momento en el que ustedes o las personas son entregadas a las autoridades del lado mexicano. Este documento es lo que repercute para ustedes poderse identificar y de que han sido parte de este proceso de deportación y que entran a territorio nacional. El documento, como pueden ver en la imagen, pues trae lo que es la fotografía, por quién es expedido y también los hechos, ¿no? De cuándo fue que se recepcionó a esta persona que fue entregada por efectos de no cumplir con las reglas de migración del lado de Estados Unidos.
Un poco más espacio para la
Y voy a hablar un poco más despacio para evitar retos con la traducción. Y como les mencionaba, este documento, ¿por qué es importante tener este documento? Un poco considerando la historia que nos comentaba Alessandro y de muchos otros compatriotas y compatriotas, es que si ustedes deciden retornar de manera voluntaria, con un retorno digno, y no tienen un proceso con ICE y simplemente agarran un vuelo o un camión o cruzan la frontera a territorio mexicano, este documento pues no van a tener ustedes acceso a él de manera inmediata, sino que ustedes tendrían que acercarse al Instituto Nacional de Migración en sus oficinas que tienen en todas las entidades federativas del país y tienen su delegación principalmente en las capitales de cada estado. En el caso de Tijuana tienen ahí mismo una delegación, siendo como el punto de mayor internación de personas que entrega ICE. Y pueden solicitar este documento y se deberán de estar preguntando de qué me sirve tener un documento en el cual se constata que regresé a México o por el cual fui deportado. La importancia de tener esta carta de repatriación es para poder acceder a ciertos programas que tiene el gobierno mexicano federal. Seguramente han escuchado de alguno, el más conocido en este momento desde el año pasado es México Te Abraza. Y este programa, a pesar de que estamos identificando que puede tener algunos retos en su implementación, en un inicio, si ustedes son entregados por ICE hacia migración, automáticamente les ofrecerán los servicios de este programa, lo cual implica al menos un albergue, un par de días, van a tener atención médica y van a poder tramitar en estos espacios o albergues que tiene el Instituto Nacional de Migración un par de documentos como los que han mencionado ya Isabel y Jocelyn. Le ayudan a las personas a tener acceso a su acta de nacimiento o también tener una comunicación con sus familiares, sobre todo si no han podido explicar las circunstancias de su familia en Estados Unidos o del lado mexicano, y ganan un poco de tiempo para poder decidir cuáles son los siguientes pasos. Independientemente de si ustedes deciden hacer un retorno voluntario, pueden acceder a migración para este trámite, para tener esta carta de repatriación y después acceder a los beneficios de México Te Abraza. Tal vez no van a necesitar el tema del albergue o de la comunicación, pero les puede servir como un apoyo monetario que les entregan en una tarjeta para poder ustedes trasladarse o para poder al menos cubrir las necesidades básicas en las primeras semanas en México, como alimentación o algún transporte. También les dejamos ahí un número en caso de que quieran comunicarse con el Centro de Información y Asistencia de Mexicanos, el cual es 24 horas, y también les puede dar información sobre esta carta de repatriación y otros mecanismos que tienen de ayuda a migrantes del lado de la Secretaría de Relaciones Exteriores. Igual, con mucho gusto, si tienen alguna pregunta, pueden acceder al módulo de Q&A y vamos a estar respondiéndolas. Gracias, Jocelyn.
Sorry for the technical difficulties. Okay, so thank you so much to our panelists and for all of you who joined us today. We're opening up to Q&A. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat because that will be the easiest way for me to field them as the moderator. But I do already have some questions that have come through either through the chat or that I've already planned to ask based on what our panelists have already shared. So I think it's really important to highlight, why is it that we're talking about identity, and why is it that it's so important, especially as our first webinar? So Isabella and Jocelyn, I want to ask you all, why is it that we chose to start with this, right? And if you could please reiterate the order of documents and why it's important to prioritize some over others. Yes, so if you could please elaborate.
Maybe we can go back to the slide, Jocelyn, that has the list of all 5 documents, just so we can have it to visualize. But yeah, to start this webinar series, talking about identity documents, it's really like the jumping point, for you to start anew in another country, if that is what you desire to do. You're going to need to have those documents to do the basic, for the basic necessities of life, for you and for your family. And so that's why we wanted to start out with that. You're going to need your birth certificate, your passport, your INE, RFC, to enjoy all the rights that a Mexican citizen would enjoy.
Yeah, and can you share the documents again for people to take note? What were the top one, in order? Well, as we get that slide back up, I do want to say that, the importance of why we're discussing identity, especially now that we're doing binational work, is identity is key to be able to access services in Mexico. So in terms of anything from maybe getting a job, the healthcare system, the education system, but even simple things like opening up a bank account, being able to sign a rental agreement, being able to even open up a cell phone line. So this is why identity is such an important thing to start with if you're considering potentially going back to home country. So as we get those documents up, or there we go. Back to it. Just in terms of order. And also, I think, Jocelyn, you mentioned, like, for example, your RFC, which is also necessary to pay taxes, you're not able to get that unless you have the other documents. Is that correct?
That is correct. And then something that, again, we'd like to stress is that bank accounts can be very, very difficult to open, very difficult and picky with what they would like. And to be able to get your bank account open and set, a lot of these things a lot of these documents we were talking about are necessary.
Alessandro, would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, the only thing, it's not necessarily a document, but Isabella did cover it when she went in to talk about the INE. But also you need an address. And so just, that it may not be on this list, but it's also just as equally important. For you to even get an INE, you need an address, an RFC, an address. And so just, it may not be a government document, but a physical address, a bill, any of those things are also really important. And you need your INE and your birth certificate to get any of those. So just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, thank you. Eduardo, my question is for you. We had a question about the consulate and what are the difference between getting a document at the consulate or in Mexico. So can you please talk about, one, what are the documents that you might be able to take into what are the documents you might be able to obtain in the consulate, right? But what also might be limitations of some of those documents, like the INE that's given by the consulate.
Gracias, Marisa. Sí, es importante tener en cuenta que no todos estos documentos los expide el consulado, como ya lo hemos mencionado. Eh, el consulado te puede expedir lo que es el acta de nacimiento, te puede expedir tu INE, tu pasaporte. En el tema del CURP, como ya lo explicaron también, puedes hacerlo vía internet o también ir con las oficinas de RENAPO. Algo importante que hay que tener en cuenta es que si tú tramitas tu INE en un consulado en cualquier parte de Estados Unidos, al tener una dirección de Estados Unidos, porque lo estás tramitando desde el exterior, esto tiene una limitación muy específica, que es que no podrías votar para elecciones locales, pero sí te permite votar para las elecciones federales. Como saben, toda persona mexicana, aunque se encuentre fuera del país, tiene esta posibilidad de acceder al voto cuando son para elecciones presidenciales y designan específicamente en el consulado o lugares específicos para el día de la elección poder hacerlo, ya sea por vía presencial o también se puede hacer por paquetería, dependiendo la ubicación de la persona. Pero en el caso de tener un INE expedida por un consulado, pues sí te limitaría al momento de haber una elección para presidente municipal o para diputados locales, el cual no se podría llevar a cabo al estar tú en el exterior, pero bueno, como saben, pueden tener un INE expedida en el consulado y una vez si deciden o terminan en México, pueden pedir el cambio a una INE con la dirección con un domicilio en territorio mexicano. También las INES a partir de un par de años te dan la opción de querer tener en tu INE la dirección completa de tu domicilio o solo una dirección, digámoslo así, que señale solo la colonia y el municipio por temas de seguridad. Eso es una opción voluntaria que cada uno puede elegir. Y bajo mi experiencia y de varias personas que vivimos acá, por un lado, el lado positivo es que si te tiene acceso a tu INE una persona de vigilancia, tal vez de algún lugar, de un fraccionamiento o un policía o cualquier autoridad que te lo pide, pues no va a tener conocimiento exacta de dónde es tu domicilio. Y muchas personas prefieren eso por un tema de seguridad y también de manejo de datos privados. Pero una desventaja de escoger esta opción de no tener el desglose completo de tu domicilio es que no puedes utilizar tu INE como un comprobante de domicilio en otros tipos de trámites. Por ejemplo, el acceso a una cuenta bancaria. Entonces, el banco te va a decir que ese INE no te sirve para comprobar que ese es tu domicilio, que es uno de los requisitos para la apertura bancaria. Entonces, tiene que tener en consideración esa situación que se puede subsanar, sí, teniendo un pasaporte y llevando un comprobante de domicilio. Pero bueno, son más documentos los que te estarían pidiendo en ese tipo de trámite.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. And something else that I just wanted to add as a personal experience as someone who is also a dual national and who has an INE, I actually had to get a new INE in Mexico for the same reason because many places didn't want to actually accept it as a formal form of ID because it had a US address on it, even though it was given to me by the Mexican consulate. Same thing with the matricula. Matricula is a very popular document here in the States that people use as a form of identification, but it doesn't hold the same weight or validity when you go to Mexico, which is why it's very important for a document such as a birth certificate, a passport, and an INE that's actually expedited in Mexico carries much more weight. Also, okay, a question for Kevin, because I know we've been talking a lot about the return of folks on an individual level, but I do also want to touch briefly on what people should do if they have a mixed status family who decides to come with them. So if like a parent decides to return to a home country and takes their child, what type of identity documents would you recommend that child or that family member to have?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. So can you go back, Jocelyn? Or is there a slide on it?
No, there's no
Okay.
slide. The question I decided to ask.
So yes, so today we talked about Mexican identity documents, but it's also important that in the case of mixed status families, for example, if a parent, like as Marissa mentioned, has no status, is returned to home country, to Mexico in this situation, and wants to bring their son or daughter who was born in the US but is a US citizen, it's very important to also obtain US identity documents, those being birth certificate and passport. However, something that we've seen is that sometimes the birth certificate, a US birth certificate, is not enough abroad. We've seen cases where US consulates are pretty much saying birth certificates are fraudulent and then don't want to expedite passports, like US passports to US citizen children. And that causes a lot of problems in Mexico because the passport is a form of identity that they can then use to get their Mexican identity documents because because if they are dual national and can like claim citizen like Mexican citizenship or Mexican nationality, they will require a form of identity, and that would be their US passport. So again, just to highlight in mixed status families, it's really important to try to obtain both forms of identity documents, their US birth certificate, but most importantly, their US passport, and try to do their dual nationality starting from here as well.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. And just to reiterate, because this is something that we're actually seeing happen quite common, especially in our binational work. So when a parent leaves, takes their child, the custom is to take only the birth certificate. The birth certificate is oftentimes not sufficient, even before the eyes of the US consulate, even though it shouldn't be. And then in order for the child to derive Mexican citizenship, the Mexican government requires a picture ID that's issued by the United States. So a passport. So it's really important to try to get these documents now ahead of time if you can, and if it's possible, to then declare the child's dual citizenship as well. We don't have enough time to really go into details on dual citizenship on this webinar, but just as a heads up, it's really important that even your family members work on getting their identity documents in the event that they decide to follow you back to home country. And then Alessandro, I actually have a couple questions for you. But basically hearing your story too, and how scary it may be to go somewhere. It's another form of immigrating. We've talked about this, right? Because growing up in the United States, returning to your home country, where you have to reestablish your roots, and you talk about community. So can you talk a little bit about how you've built community in Guadalajara?
Thank you. I want to acknowledge that you used the word emigrated. I wouldn't feel comfortable continuing the webinar if I didn't acknowledge what just happened here in Guadalajara in particular. I'm pretty sure a lot of folks that are jumping on are also like, have what happened in mind when it comes, and we will have a whole series, a whole webinar on safety and security. But I want to ground folks in there is violence everywhere, and we navigate that in different ways. For me, I grew up in South Central during the 90s, and I grew up in South Central during the Rodney King riots. So that was very present for me. Seeing military presence for me was very normalized. Seeing heavy police presence was normalized. Growing up in Boyle Heights in the 90s, seeing bullets come through my window, that was normalized. For better or worse, the situation here, what I can tell you all is, it is definitely exacerbated by US media. I'm not by any means saying that it is not in some form scary, but it's like a lot of things. Use your common sense. And so for me, the way that I've built community to remind me of those things here is by connecting to local nonprofits, by for going to I played softball in LA for 3 years. I found a softball team. So think of the things that you want to do and that you like to do at home. You can do them here and meet people. La gente de Guadalajara es súper linda. People from Guadalajara, from Mexico, they will give you the shirt on their back if you talk to them about what you need. They're so empathetic about the humanity that someone is going through as a new arrival, whether it's forced or by choice. So I think that, for me, it was really connecting and staying true to the things that I like to do. Like if I left the US and I like playing sports, let me find a sport that allowed me to continue that. If I wanted to go into a topic or go to museums, I've been doing those things, but also immersing myself in the community here where I live. It is the focal point for a lot of movements and marches. So I've also met some folks when the whole thing happened with the unaliving of the mayor of Michoacán, and the whole el movimiento agrícola, the agricultural movement that's happening. It was really connecting and learning. So I've really used this opportunity to immerse myself in the community, pushing myself to be social in ways that are new, practicing my Spanish, allowing me to really use the Spanish so that I am not a no sabo kid over here. Um, but it's really a great reminder that community can be built wherever you are. It's just going to be different. I think that I remind myself of even when I was in Boyle Heights, when I joined the Bitch Runners, never did I think that they were going to be some of my closest friends, but there's a burning group here. I run on Wednesdays with Los Corredores Colomos. So it's really about pushing yourself and again thinking about the things that you like over there, the things you love over there, you can like and love over here in your home country. So I think it's reminding yourself of those things, finding new interests. If you want to learn something new, I love cooking. One of the things about Mexico is everyone's on their hustle. People are trying to be entrepreneurs. So you will find a class to learn something new. I took a pottery class the other day. So I think that it really has allowed me to engage with people, and people are so talkative. If anything, I have to force myself to be more talkative, but I've been able to build a small community of people through the things that I love to do, which is running and playing sports. And I'm very fortunate to have the people from the Binational Clinic um, come as often as they do and always remind me of home.
Thank you, Alessandro. Yeah, and that's the thing is that community definitely exists also in Mexico, and I can tell you that that's something that I've also been able to cultivate doing this binational work. And there's actually a big population of folks who have either, decided to self-return or who have been deported and are quite active. So reach out to other organizations too. For example, there's ODA, the Otro Dreamers Action Network, which is based out of Mexico City and often give resources too. There's also the Rising Center in Guadalajara, who gives support to the community, specifically those who have been repatriated. So there are organizations and groups of folks who have been similarly situated and can also offer support. And then just one last thing that I wanted to add, thank you, Kevin, for reminding me, is it's really important that if you do decide to make this decision to just be informed, and that includes being informed if there is any avenue or relief for you to remain in the United States. So I know it's scary, but we highly recommend that folks go and get an immigration consultation with someone that they trust, a trusted attorney. We do offer consultations as part of our clinic here in LA as well. And also sometimes, believe it or not, because we're doing this work in Mexico, we often also can find ways for people to come back. But obviously this is very case specific. So it's really important that you speak with an immigration attorney before making this decision to see if there are avenues for you to remain or return. And of course, there's Alessandro, who's also part of the community too. How could I forget? But yes, Alessandro, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna highlight that because to be honest with you, as you heard at the beginning of my story, I decided to come on my own and I didn't seek a lawyer's help. And I've come to find out that there may be possibilities for me to return. So definitely don't underscore your story and be honest with the whole parts of it, even the parts that might embarrass you or might cause you shame. You never know what any of that trauma can cause and lead to in terms of your immigration case.
very true. Thank you, Alessandro. And then also, Alessandro, I wanted to know, can you share your Substack with us too?
Yeah, they can.
Yeah, and especially, you hit on my other question, was the term of safety. And I think that your latest Substack that you wrote on what occurred in Guadalajara is very important for people to understand. And something too, as someone who also engages in binational work and has been asked this question, especially recently, as Alessandro says, we've all experienced violence, and the United States is not exempt from that either, as we know from what's been occurring in our communities, what occurred in LA this summer, and what is occurring in Minnesota. But within community, we do keep each other safe. But yeah, those were my questions. If there are any last thoughts from our panelists or any last questions, please drop them in the Q&A. We also had a question about what are the other webinar series are going to cover. I think, was that another question that we got on the chat? But yes, we will be talking about finances, safety. Can you guys remind me of the other ones? Oh,
I'm
do
going
you
to
have
pull
it
it
up?
up right now.
Oh, okay. Oh yes, it's the last slide. Yeah, but it's a 4-part series. This is our very first one. So thank you so much for joining us and for being patient with our technical difficulties as we figured it out. But we'll be having 2 more. Actually, sorry, I said 4. It is 3 in total. And also, if you have any questions or if you want to reach out to us, we highly recommend that you follow us on social media, and particularly Instagram. We're actually quite active and also place Know Your Rights and other informational material. So feel free to add us at Loyola IJC for our Immigrant Justice Clinic based in LA, and LIBMAT, which is our Loyola ITESO Binational Migrant Advocacy project that Eduardo directs as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Yeah. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining.